Hey everybody, Ross here, and this is Bible Study Superstar. If this is your first time on this channel, click here to go back to the intro, or if you'd just like to see what's been happening recently, click here to go back to Genesis 14. Now, without further ado, I'm just going to jump right into Genesis 15, verse 1. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward." But Abram said, "Lord God, what will you give me, seeing I go childless, and the heir of my house is Eleazar of Damascus?" Then Abram said, "Look, you have given me no offspring. Indeed, one born in my house is my heir." And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, "This one shall not be your heir, but one who will come from your own body shall be your heir." Then he brought him outside and said, "Look now toward heaven, and count the stars, if you are able to number them." Then he said to him, "So shall your descendants be." And he believed in the Lord, and he accounted it to him for righteousness. Then he said to him, "I am the Lord, who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans, to give you this land to inherit it." And he said, "Lord God, how shall I know that I will inherit it?" So he said to him, "Bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon." So he brought all these things to him and cut them in two, down the middle, and placed each piece opposite the other. But he did not cut the birds in two. And when the vultures came down on the carcasses, Abram drove them away. Now when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell on Abram, and behold, horror and great darkness fell upon him. Then he said to Abram, "Know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and they will serve them, and they will afflict them 400 years. And also the nation whom they served I will judge. Afterward they shall come out with great possessions. Now as for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall return here, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete." And it came to pass, when the sun went down and it was dark, that behold, there appeared a smoking oven and a burning torch that passed between those pieces. On the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, "To your descendants I have given this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates, the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites." Alright, it seems like, just as a random note, that we're getting some kind of random list name at some point in every chapter recently. But anyway, why did God tell Abram not to be afraid? Abram was afraid that vengeance would come upon him after the attack in Genesis 14 that brought about Lot's rescue. That wasn't the whole story, though. We can see, based on the rest of the chapter, that Abram was having doubts if he had really heard from God, and if God had really promised Abram what he did. Abram had been wandering for some time now, and he had still not had a child born to him. He was concerned that his inheritance would be left to one of his servants. God then reassured Abram of his promise by reminding him that he did indeed bring him out of his home country. And because Abram believed God, it was counted to him for righteousness. Moving on. What was God doing when he had Abram collect the animals, kill them, and cut most of them in half? God was making a covenant with Abram. A covenant, in simple terms, is a contract between two or more consenting parties. It's performed by cutting an animal in half and placing each half opposite from each other. Then each party entering the covenant walks between the two halves as a symbol of saying, if I break this covenant, may the same thing that happened to this animal happen to me. So, needless to say, these people took their contracts, so to speak, very seriously. Moving on again. When it came time for God and Abram to pass between the animals and establish the covenant, God put Abram into a deep sleep and then passed between the animals by himself. What God had done was established that the entirety of the covenant's requirements and stipulations were his responsibility alone. God was promising Abram and his descendants what would later be known as the Promised Land, and that it would be God's responsibility alone to carry out that promise without any covenant responsibility on Abram or his descendants' part. And finally, while in this deep sleep, God showed Abram how his descendants would be enslaved in Egypt, how God would judge Egypt, and how he would bring the enslaved people out. Though he did not show Abram the names and the places. We'll be reading all about this in detail later in Exodus, much later. And that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching. If you have any comments, feedback, or suggestions, just leave them below in a video response or in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you all soon in Genesis 16.